Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Members, we are going to begin with S11 and then move to S234. Next up is Senate Bill 11, which is an act relating to prohibiting robocalls. The bill was referred to the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Woodstock, Representative Kimball, will speak for the committee. Affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends that the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development be amended as printed in today's calendar. The member from Calais, Representative Ansel, will speak for that committee. Carrying an appropriation, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with proposals of amendment recommended by the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development and the Committee on Ways and Means. The member from Brattleboro, Representative Tolino, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S11, an act relating to prohibiting robocalls.
Member from Woodstock.
I am pleased to present to you S11 and first to explain its origins. It is not, in fact, an act relating to preventing robocalls, but that did provide us with a vehicle to combine two bills that you may be familiar with. The first is H703. You will remember a long floor presentation. Many people have spoken to me about the length of that floor presentation that we did pass earlier in the session. The first 45 sections of this bill are the elements of H703, which we have previously passed. The other elements of the bill are H159, which was an economic development bill passed over to us by the Senate. That bill is now committed to the Committee on House Ways and Means because it did have some tax expenditure items in there, including tax increment financing districts and some other elements. We have used S11 as a vehicle to combine those portions of H159 that are related to economic development and to combine those with the workforce development elements from H703. So I'll be presenting today information just on H159, those elements around economic development. So if you will, you can go to page 3414 in the calendar to find the section number 46, which is starting with Capital Investment Grant Program. This bill amends the existing Capital Investment Grant Program as passed in 2021 to fund transformational regional programs. The original appropriation was for $10.6 million. The Agency of Commerce and Community Development developed the program and received applications for over $70 million in requests. But the final ARPA rule issued by the US Treasury clarified that many of the proposed projects were not eligible, that there needed to be nexus to COVID-19 or an industry specifically harmed by COVID-19. The grants were limited to $1.5 million. This amendment seeks to align with the final ARPA rule, lowers the percentage of a project can be funded at 20% of the total cost instead of 50%, and lowers the grant amount to $1 million. Further, this amendment seeks to adjust the requirement for the next net fiscal impact that was established in 2021, recognizing that these funds are intended for recovery primarily, and that the grant amount was reduced significantly because of it. The appropriation, a later section of the bill, is for $10.2 million in additional funds for the program coming from the general fund. Section 47, is for the VITA short-term forgivable loan program. This new short-term forgivable loan program is established to replace the Economic Recovery Bridge Grant Program that was established in 2021. That program's requirements were too stringent for applicants to apply for meaningful grant amounts. Of the $30 million that was allocated, there remained $25.5 million in unexpended funds. In the House, we had used those funds to support parts of H703 and also H624 about the creative business sector. This is a good program. Why? Well, VITA is doing the underwriting and administration using their talents and systems to determine the working capital needs of businesses still affected by COVID-19. They need to determine the economic harm. 2, this is a forgivable loan, not an outright grant. If the business fails to abide by the terms of the loan, they have to repay it in 1 year. 3, VITA has taken into account any other federal grants received or that may be available in the future. Loan amounts are capped at $500,000 or 6 months of operating expenses or the cumulative decline in net operating income. 5, the forgiveness based on documentation of eligible use of funds will be reviewed by VITA. It also identifies priority sectors that have been harmed larger and greater proportion because of COVID-19. Some of the requirements of the forgivable loans, that they have to have fewer than 500 employees in operation, or and also be in operation, excuse me, or take substantial steps towards operation as of March 12, 2020. They have to have demonstrated through reduced revenue or increased expenses related to COVID-19 and baseline period versus 2020 and 2021, and at least a 25% reduction in adjusted net operating income. The maximum loan is a lesser of $500,000 or 6 months of eligible operating expenses, or the amount of cumulative decline. We move to section 48, the Windham County Economic Development Program. You remember that Entergy had purchased Vermont Yankee Nuclear Power Plant and that they moved to shut down the plant. They entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Public Utilities Commission to pay $10 million to the state of Vermont for a way to provide a glide path for economic development in the wake of the closure of Vermont Yankee and the elimination of 600 highly paid jobs in Windham County. The intent of those funds was to spur economic development. What was created was a Windham County Economic Development Council to advise the Agency of Commerce and Community Development on applications for grants and loans. Grants were made by ACCD and loans were underwritten by VITA. The Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, one of the 12 regional development corporations in the state, has provided the on-site management of the grants and loans, though the Agency of Commerce and Community Development still has expended time on the reporting of the WikiDip program. The original $10 million has been fully dispersed in grants and in loans, but the outstanding loans are being repaid to VITA, and VITA is reimbursing the state in the Entergy Windham County Economic Development Special Fund. So who owns the funds? That's the question. BDCC, remember that's Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, has applied for grants from the fund in the past, most recently in 2019. And they have received funds to support a revolving loan fund in Windham County. But more funds have been repaid, and now BDCC has the personnel capacity and the experience to administer the funds to benefit economic recovery in Windham County. They have initiated this request to receive both the balance of money in the fund and the loans receivable from VITA. We agree with the Senate that the funds can be administered effectively by BDCC and to set them aside for loans to support new and expanding businesses, and that ACCD would have some relief from that administration. So we are asking this body to eliminate the special fund and transfer the balance of the fund and the existing loans assigned by VITA to BDCC to collect. Section 49 through 51 deals with downtown tax credits. You will see an amendment from the House Ways and Means Committee on the downtown tax credits. The request here is to increase the amount for the rehabilitation of buildings over 30 years old in designated downtowns and village centers by $2.7 million for 2 years, with $2 million of that increase reserved for projects in designated neighborhood development areas, the area that encircles those designated municipalities. Section 52 deals with appropriations in the bill. The first piece is to revert that $25.5 million from the Economic Recovery Grant Program to fund the initiatives contained in the bill. Remember that earlier the House had done this in H624 regarding recovery for the creative sector, and also in H703. Second, we are proposing to fund the Forgivable Loan Program at $19 million, a $4 million increase over the proposal from the Senate, and $9 million for the Vermont Arts Council to provide grants to creative economy businesses and nonprofits that have sustained substantial losses from the pandemic. We further are allocating an additional $10.2 million in the capital investment grants from the general fund. We're also allocating $1.8 million for the Everyone Eats program. You will remember that this program was stood up in 2020 with a creative approach to emergency response to help individuals facing food insecurity, local farmers who lost access to the customer base, and restaurants forced to close or shut down or curtail operations because of emergency orders in the name of public health and safety. The program has been very successful. Since August 2020, Vermont Everyone Eats has distributed 2.44 million meals from 270 Vermont restaurants to vulnerable neighbors experiencing food insecurity. These meals have generated $24 million in stabilizing revenue for these restaurants and funneled nearly $2.5 million in revenue to Vermont farmers and food producers. FEMA funding, administered through ACCD and currently at 100% of the cost with no match, is expecting to transition to a 10% match requirement on July 1st. This $1.8 million will pull down an additional $17.2 million. Nope, that's $16.2 million. I'm sorry about my math. And funding to continue this program for another year through June 30th, 2023. Section 53 is about pandemic unemployment assistance. It would extend the sunset on the ability of Vermont Department of Labor to access tax return information for purposes of confirming income related to the PUA program, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. This is necessary to carry out the compliance checks required by the federal government. Section 54 is the Paid Leave Grant Program, COVID-19 Paid Leave Grant Program. The Senate has proposed to create a COVID-19 related paid leave grant program, borrowing much of the structure from the Frontline Employees Hazard Grant Program that was established in 2020. Because of the surge of variants of COVID-19, many workers have had to take additional leave from work to care for themselves or a family member. In some cases, employers were able and willing to pay the workers for the additional leave, and in other cases, they were not able to do so, causing financial stress for those families. This program uses $16.5 million in ARPA funds so that employees can receive paid leave through their employers. It runs from July 1st, 2022 to 6/30 of 2023. To be eligible, individuals must have taken time off for the COVID-19 related reasons. Employers must apply for a grant with the following conditions. A grant is limited to 67% of what the payment is made to the employee at a maximum of $27.50 per hour, or 67% of minimum wage is the minimum. The employer has to contribute 33% of the payment, so they are invested in this program as currently constructed. The maximum award is for lesser of 80 hours or 2 times average weekly hours for 6 months prior to any taking of leave, capped at $2,200 per individual. We've asked the Department of Financial Regulation to administer this program, and they have reluctantly agreed. For their services, they are entitled to a 7% administrative fee to manage the program and to staff up accordingly. Sections 55 through 55D is unemployment insurance, and perhaps the most complicated part of this bill. In 2021, after paying out nearly $300 million in unemployment insurance benefits, the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund still hovered around $200 million. The questions at the time were, is it enough? And given projections of contributions, is it too much? In fact, estimates showed that the UI Trust Fund, given the wage base and tax rate schedule, would build to $1 billion over 10 years. The legislature recognized that we did not need to build it up to that level, having just weathered the worst short-term withdrawal in the fund. And so we adjusted the formula to reduce the burden on businesses. At the same time, we evaluated options open to increase benefits to unemployed individuals and agreed upon an additional $25 per week benefit until the payment totaled $100 million from the UI Trust Fund. In August of 2021, the US Department of Labor told our Vermont Department of Labor that we could not use the UI Trust Fund to pay out those benefits. This bill repeals the date that benefit was supposed to take effect, October 7th, 2021. The UI task force last summer and fall explored different ideas about adjustments to the maximum benefit and the minimum benefit. Alas, neither the legislature nor the administration could determine a way to pay the extra $25 per week, given the limitations of our aged UI mainframe. The Senate proposed to establish a supplemental fund of $8 million to pay the $25 weekly benefit until the UI system could be at the point of being able to handle this new program. But the costs of administering the supplemental program were estimated to be very high, and alternatives, including third-party payers, had additional complications. After taking extensive testimony, we conceded that we could not find a clear path for the payment of this benefit until the UI system is updated. And for that, there is a separate appropriation in the budget for phases 2 through 4 of that project, now truncated to just phase 2. This section of the bill sets the increase in the $25 additional weekly benefit to begin July 1st, 2025. It is still ambitious to consider that the UI system will be capable at that time, but it may be possible. We've asked that the Secretary of the Agency of Digital Services and the Commissioner of Labor keep the legislature informed about the progress of the modernization project to be able to make this additional payment beginning in 2025, as well as progress reports from the legislative IT consultant. In the effective dates, you'll see that the $25 additional payment is to stay in effect until the original $100 million agreed upon amount is reached. Section 56 is the effective dates. You will find the effective dates also include many of the elements of H703, which we did not go over today, but you have received a full floor report on that previously. Madam Speaker. And that, Madam Speaker, in our process of one last thing, there are some things you'll notice that are not in our bill that did come over in H159. The Senate had proposed to us many different programs. One is a $6 million appropriation for the worker relocation program, $1 million in base funding and $5 million in one-time funding. This House has not supported this program in the past, and this proposal strikes it from our counter to the Senate. It also included $4.2 million for marketing and a network of community navigators to promote the worker relocation program and provide concierge services to individuals through regional partnerships. There was $8 million in UI supplemental benefit payments, which we've just discussed that we are not able to do at this time. We've used those monies in different appropriations. The $10.2 million for the capital investment program, and also increasing the amount for the Forgivable loan program to $19 million and the arts program up to $9 million. There was an element asking for the creation of a film commission study. That is not in this bill. There was also a sports betting study. This is not in this bill. There's also information about or request for tax increment financing language amendments and for the establishment of a new project-based TIF program. That is not in this bill. There was also a study on establishing a paid family leave. We've opted not to put that in here, thinking that it's better to actually move forward with establishing it rather than studying it. And also there was a provision for increasing the minimum wage, and we have not included that in this presentation or in the bill. We have heard from many people while considering the elements of this bill, and I have a list of people who testified. If you care to see it, I'm happy to talk to you about that. And Madam Speaker, we passed this bill out of committee by a vote of 11-0. No, 10-0-1. Thank you. And we ask for your support.
And now speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Calais.
Madam Speaker, your Ways and Means Committee has 2 instances of amendment on S11. If members will look at page 3431, they'll see both instances. Our first recommendation of amendment is to delete the two sections on CTE funding and governance. We support that effort, that study, but the language is also in S-287, which has already passed the body, and we thought it was better not to have it in two separate bills. The second instance of amendment redoes slightly the way the downtown and village tax center and additional appropriation is handled. What we've recommended is that $2.7 million be appropriated from the general fund to the tax credit program to be used in fiscal years 23 and 24. We haven't specified that the amount be divided between the two fiscal years. We felt that the program could decide how to allocate that money between the fiscal years. We've also said that up to $2 million may be awarded to qualified projects located in designated neighborhood development areas. That designated the NDA area tax credit program is not in this bill. So it's a little awkward the way it's set up, but we think this will work. One thing I wanted to be clear, as we made these amendments, what we wanted to do is we wanted to protect the $3 million base funding in the downtown program. So that $3 million will continue because we have sufficient money to allocate additionally to the downtown program. We did it as an appropriation and we did it over the course of 2 years. We heard from 3 members of our legislative council staff. We heard from the fiscal analyst in the joint fiscal office. The vote on the amendment was 10-01 and our vote on the bill was 10-01. And we asked the body to concur. Thank you.
Member from Woodstock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our committee had the opportunity to meet with the chair of House Ways and Means this morning and to hear the amendment. We appreciate the good work that the committee has done. And on a vote of 9-02, we found the amendment favorable.
And now speaking for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Brattleboro.
Madam Speaker, I want to just make sure that I am oriented correctly because I was looking at the calendar and I had a sudden panic attack about the language referring to an appropriations amendment. And I don't think that we amended it, but we did hear the full walkthrough of the bill and we voted it out of committee with a supportive vote of 11-0-0.
Now the question is, shall the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development be amended as recommended by the Committee on Ways and Means? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. Now the member from Woodstock and others offer a further amendment to the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. This amendment was emailed to members at 1:59 this afternoon by our first assistant clerk. Members, there are 2 versions of this amendment that were emailed, and the second one contains the updated language to be offered. So be sure you're looking at the most recent one emailed at 1:59 p.m. This amendment can also be found on our House Overview webpage. And it is also my understanding that the member from Woodstock will be offering this floor amendment in lieu of the one printed in today's calendar. Member from Woodstock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You are correct. And the old saying is anything worth doing is worth doing twice. And in this case, maybe 3 times. So we did have some refinements to the amendment from our committee members, not officially the committee. So the amendment that was sent out to you at 1:59 does reflect those changes. There was also a fiscal note that was sent out by email at 2:11 p.m. And that fiscal note is dated 4/29. So you should have that in your email box as well. I apologize for the multiple emails, but you should have the most up-to-date information now. This this amendment is version 6.1. And it was dated as of 1:19 p.m., but mailed to you at 1:59. And it has 3 different instances of amendment. First, it is dealing with a section of H703, or the part of this S11, regarding student loan repayment assistance, and is language to clarify the area around Head Start teachers being eligible for loan repayment. And at the bottom of page 1, you'll see that the language is changed to say if the individual is an employee of a Vermont Head Start program that operates fewer than 48 weeks per year, work a minimum of 9 months of the year, inclusive of an employer-approved time off. And that's to recognize the unique circumstance that many Vermont Head Start teachers are in, where they're working 9 full months, but are not working those extra 3 months of the year. And then to receive an annual salary on page 2 of this amendment of not more than $50,000 through the individual's work in regulated childcare. This is to recognize that many Head Start teachers do have jobs outside of their normal job, and in that time period where they're not working for Head Start may have an income outside, and that may put them over the threshold. So this is to really recognize that it is the amount of money they're earning in their position. So those are the 2 elements in that first instance of amendment. And the second instance of amendment is to remove from a provision in the Forest Futures part of the bill that specifically called out a company that had to be considered in terms of getting a contract, and that was the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. It is not the practice of this body to specifically name who that potential contractor is or could be. So we are asking for the 3rd sentence in that part of the bill to be removed. It was already redundant, and this makes it clearer and removes that specific person. The 3rd part of the bill is the 3rd instance of amendment is a little more complicated. It is renaming that community investment program or capital investment program that we talked about earlier as the Community Recovery and Revitalization Grant Program. The purpose of this is to include municipalities as eligible applicants and recipients for grant monies under this original program. We mentioned project-based TIFs or mini TIFs as a concept to provide a simpler way for municipalities to invest in public works that are necessary in order to spur on development. We're looking at this as a potential solution for that by allocating monies so that municipalities could apply for those public works projects that make an opportunity for that project. So the total program includes both that capital investment program and this municipality concept. So you'll see on page 3 of the amendment is to make investments to retain and expand existing businesses and nonprofit organizations, to attract new businesses and nonprofit organizations, and create new jobs with a preference for projects located in regions and communities with a declining or stagnant grand list value. We had a lot of discussion in our committee about what did that mean to have a stagnant or declining grand list value. And we have charged the agency to work with Vermont Economic Progress Council to consider a couple of different ways of looking at that, so that it's not just one thing or the other, and looking at one is the total grand list value or the education grand list. So you'll find that wording in the bill a little further on in the amendment. So this is, let's see, those are the essential elements of it. But on page 5, you'll see grant funds, the eligible uses for municipalities. For the project clearly requires substantial public investment over and above the normal municipal operating or bonded debt expenditures, and the public improvements being requested are integral to the expected private development. The agency had originally requested an enhanced grand list program, grand list enhancement program of $30 million. The Senate did not see fit to fund that program. And we're looking at this as being a portion of that to really look at those communities that are still looking for that extra bit of gap financing in order to get over the finish line. The loans are limited to $1 million and 20% of the total project costs, or I'm sorry, the grants. So it is not all of the financing, it's just a piece of the stack of financing. The Vermont Economic Progress Council, which you know helps administer both or does administer the tax increment financing program and also the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive Program, is then charged with really reviewing applications from municipalities to make sure that they qualify. And that is where we spent the bulk of our time discussing it. On a straw poll of our committee, Madam Speaker, we did approve this as a vote of 10-0-1. And we ask for your support.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development be amended as offered by the member from Woodstock and others? Member from Pittsburgh.
Madam Speaker, may I inquire of the presenter of the amendment?
The member from Woodstock is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, I'm looking at the amendment on page 3, and you piqued my interest when we talk about declining or stagnant grand list values. In light of the current demand for Vermont properties, many of our towns who probably did have a declining or stagnant grand list value are now seeing an inflated grand list based on property sales. Did you take into any consideration on what could happen or what is happening now in some of our regional communities?
Thank you very much for the question. Madam Speaker, we looked at two different things because there are two different concepts. One is, what is the value of the existing inventory of real estate or properties that are on the grand list, and what has happened with those values? The second is, has there been any new construction in those communities? And those are two very separate questions. So the first could be considered to be indication of a struggling community that has not had an increase in the value. The second is commonly referred to as sticks and bricks. Is there any new construction going on? Because we know that in many communities, the value has gone up considerably without any new construction going on, just because of supply and demand. Well, what we're talking about in this particular program is to incent those communities to really invest in new construction as a way to spur some kind of economic revitalization in those communities. So we did talk about different data sets to look at. One was proposed as looking at the grand list value of absolute value from 2011 to 2021. Another that was proposed by the agency was the average, the percentage increase on an annual basis from 2011 to 2021. And that was on the just the total listed value. Whereas the equalized education grand list value had a different picture. So in one case, one community would be identified as being very needy because it hadn't had any kind of increase in its total full listed value, but its equalized education grand list value had increased by a significant amount. So what we're asking the Vermont Economic Progress to do is really to consider the relationship between those two different approaches.
So, Madam Speaker, you think you have enough guardrails in place for communities that could have 2 or 3 years ago been stagnant and declining, and now the grand list is not declining anymore, but it may be a false economy. Do you have those guardrails in place to protect those communities that just may see this bump and take them out of the eligibility for this program?
Yeah. Yes, Madam Speaker, the intent is to really look at those communities that have projects that have been delayed because of a lack of interest in those communities and bringing those projects online. So you're right, there could be an aberration where the value is increased because of market forces without any kind of new construction. So the part of this program is that we're asking the Agency of Commerce Community Development to develop the program guidelines, to bring them back to the committees of jurisdiction, and also to work with the Joint Fiscal Office in developing those guidelines to make sure that we're really trying to reach those communities that are intended.
Thank you, member, and thank you, Madam Speaker. That's cleared that point up for me.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development be amended as offered by the member from Woodstock and others? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have further amended the report of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. Now the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development as amended? Member from Brattleboro.
Madam Speaker, long ago in the fall of this year, I had the pleasure of chairing your unemployment insurance task force or something like that. I don't honestly remember exactly what it was called. And though we started our work with a different goal, we wound up spending quite a bit of time trying to solve the problem of how this $25 of supplemental unemployment insurance could be paid out given the administrative challenges that the Federal Department of Labor and our own Department of Labor put in our way towards that implementation. And after running through really a remarkable number of scenarios with our very patient Legislative Counsel and Joint Fiscal Office, we really came to the conclusion that there wasn't a great path forward on this. And so what we have in this bill, and I thank the Commerce Committee for it, is a promise that when our IT system is up and running and significantly more functional than the unemployment insurance IT system that we have here today, we can indeed fulfill the promise that we made last year and carry this work forward. I'm also confident that by having this date certain, we will have an extra sort of push in our step to ensure that this IT system does get up and running in the time that it deserves and with the attention to detail that it deserves. And so I am grateful for the language here and we'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development as amended? Member from Coventry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just want everyone to be sure that they also know that once we pass this, that the title of the bill will be changed from robocalls to an act relating to economic and workforce development. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development? Member from Winooski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I inquire of the presenter of the bill?
Member from Woodstock is interrogated.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In your presentation, you highlighted various pieces of H-159 that fell to the floor, I'll say, in the process, and was wondering if you could expand on why the increase in minimum wage was not included in this edition of S11.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. The increase in minimum wage as proposed by the Senate would bring it, I believe, to $15 an hour by 2024. In our discussions with economists that advise the legislature, also with the Labor Market Information Department at the Vermont Department of Labor, we tried to determine what the current wages are that are being paid as entry-level wages. And as we all know, there's been tremendous pressure on entry-level wages and as the minimum wage. And while there's not right now proof of what that is, it's mostly anecdotal, found that the wages currently being paid are in excess of even the $15 an hour, probably not uniform across every single position. But we found that it was the current market conditions are exceeding the wages that were referred to us in the bill coming over. And we did have discussions with the economist about whether or not that could be is a permanent thing or a temporary thing, and found that in the last 50 years, he did some research for us, there was only 1 year in which there was negative inflation. I believe that was 2009. So there is a very good record of once wages come up to a certain level, they have not gone down. So in our evaluation of that particular part of the bill, that is where we landed. It is unnecessary at this time.
So, Madam Speaker, if I'm understanding you correctly, if the wages are being paid at a roughly $15 an hour, This would actually make it uniform across the state of Vermont so that all wages were at least equivalent or above that $15 an hour. Am I understanding you correctly?
In establishing the minimum wage, it did not include tipped wages. So that's a different discussion about whether it's tipped or minimum wage. But yes, in terms of a minimum wage, whether it's the minimum of tipped and also tips, that usually isn't the policy purview of our committee as well. But yes, in answer to your question, the minimum wage would be uniform across the state as it is currently in the state statute and is currently indexed to what is happening with the CPI and has a maximum increase of, I believe, 5%.
Thank you, member. And Madam Speaker, I'm disappointed to see that we will not be moving forward on increasing minimum wages for workers across Vermont, especially as we continue to make significant investments into the business sector and not necessarily directly to workers themselves. I still plan to support this amendment today, but hope that we can continue our work to support Vermont's workforce.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules in order to put Senate Bill 11 in all remaining stages of passage?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to place S11 in all remaining stages of passage.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended our rules in order to place at Senate Bill 11 in all remaining stages of passage. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S11, an act relating to prohibiting robocalls.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules in order to message our action on Senate Bill 11 to the Senate forthwith?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to message our actions to the Senate on S11 forthwith.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have messaged our actions on Senate Bill 11 to the Senate forthwith. Members, at this time, we're going to take up Senate Bill 234 and following, well, we'll see where we are after that. So Senate Bill 234 is an act relating to changes to Act 50. The bill was referred to the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Manchester, Representative Bongartz, will speak for the committee. Affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends the bill ought to pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish, and Wildlife. Member from Burlington, Representative Odie, will speak for that committee. And then carrying an appropriation, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the report of the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish, and Wildlife be amended as printed in today's calendar. The member from Underhill, Representative Squirrel, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S 234, an act relating to changes to Act 250.
Member from Manchester.
Madam Speaker, S 234 makes it easier to build housing in downtowns, adds a measure of protection against forest fragmentation, which is good.
Member, my apologies, it's starting
Closer.
closer. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Adds a measure of protection against forest fragmentation, which is good for both the forest products industry and the environment. It eases operating restrictions for producers of forest products, and it makes Act 250 governance, and therefore the whole Act 250 process functional. Before getting into the bill, let me provide some context. Over the course of the last 2 years, my committee, your committee on Fish and Wildlife, on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, has taken a lot of testimony about the fact that Vermont is one of the most climate resilient states in the country. That doesn't mean, by the way, it's going to be great. It just means it's going to be better than most. We are already a climate haven, and that trend is going to accelerate. When the development boom hit us in the 1960s, we weren't prepared. This time, we know it's coming, and we have an opportunity before us to help our communities shape the inevitable changes consistent with Vermont values. We have an opportunity to be prepared, and so we must be prepared. The fact that people want to be here and are joining the larger community that is Vermont is a good thing. It can help us with our demographic problems. It can help fill our schools with students. We are operating with about 2/3 of the number of students we had 20 years ago in Vermont. We have a demographic problem. And we can help attract the workforce needed for businesses and communities to thrive. Our job, knowing that this opportunity is coming, is to help shape the influx in a way that avoids the haphazard impacts we experienced the first time around. Welcoming, thoughtful, thought through. That's one of the threads running through this bill. Another thread is to move beyond thinking about permitting on a town-by-town basis to thinking about decision-making based on the resources we are seeking to protect and who is in the best position to protect them. This bill begins to loosen Act 250 jurisdiction in communities that have adopted good local mechanisms to ensure well-located housing, while looking more closely at resources that are truly regional or statewide in nature. The terminology for this is location-based jurisdiction. This bill is a step toward the kind of deep systemic rethinking in which we need to engage as we prepare to meet the dual challenges of dramatic climate change and a growing population. A third thread is social and economic vibrancy, sometimes in big ways, like improving state and local regulations to make it easier to build more housing in mixed-use buildings needed to support thriving and welcoming communities, and sometimes in smaller but very important ways, like recognizing the weather-dependent nature of the forest products industry and making it easier for those involved to be successful. The fourth thread, a fourth thread, is to open opportunities to rural areas by providing small towns the same access to programs and benefits that larger communities have enjoyed for years. This theme of fairness to rural communities runs through this bill. We get there mostly through a series of modifications to Title 24, which has to do with municipal planning and zoning, and Act 250 to make it easier to build housing in our downtowns and neighborhoods, help protect our forests from fragmentation so they can remain the $1.2 billion economic driver they are, making it easier for the forest products industry to operate, and improving the governance of Act 250 and thus its functionality for the benefit of all Vermonters. Carefully constructed improvements to make things work better. We have a housing crisis in Vermont. Every member of this body can tell a story related to how this crisis is taking opportunity away from young people, hurting businesses desperate for employees, and worsening our demographic problems. The state of the housing market in Vermont has never been as strained as it is right now. It's heartbreaking, we all know that, and this bill is a key part of the solution. The first several sections of the bill deal with housing. These sections are another step in the efforts of the legislature to encourage settlement in and around our downtowns. Many of Vermont's small country stores and other businesses will continue to struggle against online retailers. But people actually want human contact and human experiences. This bill is about helping our downtowns be successful by encouraging housing and mixed-use development in those cores that define our communities. This is about the experience of congregating at the local store, by way of example. The housing portion of this bill is mostly about neighborhood development areas. You heard reference to that actually in the previous bill, to neighborhood developments in the previous bill. NDAs are rings around village centers and designated downtowns that, once created, set the stage for the creation of a specific kind of affordable and mixed income housing projects called priority housing projects. Because they are built in close proximity to downtowns and village centers, where hopefully we all agree it makes sense to create more housing options, they are exempt from Act 250 review. That is current law. What we are doing with this bill is to make NDAs, and therefore Act 250 exemptions and access to tax credits, newly available to rural areas. At the same time, we make it easier to build housing and mixed-use buildings in all NDAs. So to the bill. Section 1 allows towns, 2 towns, could even be 3 theoretically, to file a joint application for an NDA if their centers are close together and their NDAs would overlap. Next, it allows NDAs to include flood hazard areas if they are suitable for infill development as defined under A&R rules. This provision recognizes that most of our communities are built around rivers, often with a built environment in the core of town. Recognizing this, it allows infill development. This is where we want development in and around our cores if 3 key conditions are met. The new construction is flood-proof to 2 years above base flood elevation, the 100-year flood, 2 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. It won't make surrounding buildings more prone to flooding, and that the community has adopted both flood hazard bylaws and river corridor bylaws to protect the streams upstream and downstream from the hardened core that runs through the middle of town. Let me be clear, we're not talking about allowing construction in the raging river. That's called the floodway. We're talking about, under some circumstances, within the core of towns, allowing construction of housing and mixed-use buildings outside of the floodway, but in an area where, if you will, the water might rise in a flood, but only if those set of criteria, including approval from A&R, allows it to happen. So with the adoption of river corridor bylaws, we improve our long-term environmental resistance to flooding. Giving rivers the room upstream and downstream of the commercial core to move, flood large areas, and enrich the soil is key to flood attenuation. And so this bill, while we are allowing construction under certain circumstances in the core of the downtowns or near the core of the downtowns in flood hazard areas, the bill is actually very focused on protecting our towns from flooding by making sure that the upstream and downstream from the core of towns, and as it heads therefore into the next town, the rivers have room to meander. It's actually referred to as the meander belt in the river corridors to flood out where they need to flood out and not narrow them so that it's all raging river. This section then strikes the requirement that community have either a community water system or a municipal wastewater system as a prerequisite to applying for a neighborhood development area. This is very important because it makes the tool of neighborhood development areas available to all towns, not just those with larger populations and municipal services. It is about rural communities, and it's about fairness to those rural communities. Finally, this section requires that an NDA have a minimum density of 4 residential units per acre within its boundaries. That makes sense. We're near the middle of downtowns or in the neighborhoods just around the downtowns. The old model of zoning might have had large lot requirements in proximity to the downtown. That's not what we're trying to achieve. It's the town's choice. But if they want to adopt an NDA, then one of the requirements is that we allow at least 4 residential units per acres within its boundaries. And all of this is being done with incentives. It's all carrots, there's no sticks. Section 2 requires that a new town center also have the same minimum of 4 units of housing within its boundaries. New town centers are yet another concept. This section of the statute allows towns that didn't come into being with a true center to designate an area and try to turn it into an actual town center. We have 3 of these. Section 3, moving through the bill, says that no permit for a site plan or conditional use shall expire in less than 2 years. This provision simply recognizes the reality of the time it takes, especially for larger projects, to complete permitting, line up financing, and then by the time you do that, maybe there's cost overruns. It gives time for the applicant, the developer who has obtained a permit, it gives the real time that it takes in order to get the project off the ground. Section 4 amends the municipal grant program to allow some of the funds to go to the new grant program we'll hear about in Section 5. Section 5 creates the municipal bylaw modernization grant program to provide towns with funding to modernize their bylaws to help create vibrant downtowns. Again, we're trying to align state and local permitting requirements. There are impediments to small towns, especially to rural towns, to be able to achieve NDAs. One of them is was the current requirement of requiring municipal sewer or municipal water. The other is that these towns don't have the money to hire the expertise to help them modernize their bylaws. So this portion of the bill, the $650,000, is for the Department of Housing and Community Development to make grants to towns to modernize their bylaws, in part in order to help them bring them up to the point that they also can have NDAs. So this again is about fairness and opportunity for the entire state. Section 6 provides that to the extent increased funding is provided in fiscal year 2023 to the overall municipal and regional planning fund, this is the $650,000. The first $650,000 in new money shall be used for the modernization grants established in Section 5. Appropriations will have a clarifying amendment, but the key here is $650,000 for these grants. Section 7 prohibits towns from requiring more than 1 parking space per bedroom for accessory dwelling units. Again, we have a housing crisis. We're trying to make it possible for people to have that garage apartment that a lot of people would like to rent, and eliminating the requirement that still exists in some places for 2 cars per bedroom, and just saying there can't be more than 1 car per bedroom, 1 parking space per bedroom. Section 8, we're going back to Act 250 for a minute. That was local. Raises the cap on the number of priority housing units that are exempt from Act 250 in small towns from 25 to 50. This is in recognition of the fact that the economics of building affordable housing works better in large numbers. And this provision thus makes it more likely that small towns can gain some affordable housing near their core. The next changes are technical in nature insofar as they update definitions to be consistent with Act 250 and A&R's regulations. It also changes the definition of mixed income housing. That I won't go into this, but it's a very technical change that Housing Vermont wanted for to use bedrooms instead of some other determinant. It's a better indication of cost and square footage. Finally, this section expands the definition of priority housing projects to include mixed-use development. The whole idea here is walkability with services close by. This allows some of the floor space created in a priority housing project to be used for commercial purposes. Currently, only housing qualifies. Again, we're trying to create vibrancy in and around our downtowns with our neighborhood development process. Section 9 amends the exemption section of Act 250. It simplifies the exemption for priority housing project so that no permit or permanent amendments are needed, including for permits on existing projects, which originally went through the Act 250 process if they want to have an addition. Section 10 repeals the section I just, the previous language to what was in that section I just described. Section 11 is technical in nature. It updates Act 250 criterion 1D by replacing the term floodways with flood hazard areas and river corridors, because that's the new language. Section 12 allows towns to respond to requests, requires towns to respond to requests from Act 250 applicants within 90 days when they ask municipalities for ability to serve letters to satisfy the requirements of criterion 6 and 7, where the question is, can the town accommodate the number of students and can the town provide services? What it says is the applicant wants to know the answer to that question so that they can move forward with the process. And it says that if the town hasn't gotten around to answering it within 90 days, which is plenty of time, then the town can object at a hearing. So those are the changes related to housing. They fit what, and by making these options more available to rural communities, they are then therefore more able to gain tax credits, the kind of tax credits that were discussed in the last bill in S11, and that you're going to hear more about in 226. And so now we go on to forest blocks and connecting habitat. These sections have been passed by the House on at least 2 previous occasions in previous years. It's important to note that they do not increase Act 250 jurisdiction or create a new trigger for review. Section 13 sets forth 3 Act 250 definitions: a definition for connecting habitat, a definition for forest block, and a definition for the term habitat. These terms will now subsequently come into play under criterion Act 8 and Act 250. Habitat means the physical and biological environment in which a particular species or plant or wildlife lives. Connecting habitat means land or water that links patches of habitat within a landscape, allowing the movement, migration, and dispersal of wildlife and plants, and the function of ecological processes. Those animals and plants need to be able to move, they need to be able to migrate. And if we have everything in small clumps of space lopped off or not able to move from one to the other, we do not have an ecosystem. And so this is about making sure that that requirement for animals and plants to be able to disperse and move is protected. It's important to note here that recreational trails, as well as farming, logging, or other forestry purposes, are allowed to intersect with connecting habitat. Forest block means a contiguous area of forest in any stage of succession not currently developed for non-forest use. Just as with connecting habitat, a forest block may include features such as recreational trails, and the same thing for farming, logging, or other forestry purposes. Section 14 brings the definitions to life by adding a new subsection to criterion 8, which is the section that deals with rare and irreplaceable natural areas, to the effect that a proposed development shall not have an undue adverse impact on forest blocks and connecting habitat. According to this new subsection, if a project does create an undue adverse impact on a forest block or connecting habitat, a permit will be granted only if the project avoids or minimizes or is mitigated in accordance with rules that will be adopted by the board. So, as already mentioned, this does not create a new jurisdictional trigger. In fact, the one place that there was a new jurisdictional trigger as the bill came over from the Senate, the so-called road rule, we removed that section. And so there is no new jurisdictional trigger of any kind in this bill. Forest blocks and connecting habitat come into play only if a project already triggers review. Section 15 sets forth the responsibility of the board, be it at this moment the NRB or soon to be, if this bill is successful, the ERB, the Environmental Review Board, to develop the rules implementing criterion C, which will be to fill out the standards or best management practices to minimize undue impacts. Section 16 requires A&R to continue to maintain natural resource mapping, and this section adds forest blocks and connecting habitat to the required maps. This section also establishes procedures for updating the maps. So onto wood products manufacturers. Section 17 establishes an Act 250 definition of wood products manufacturer, basically the place that receives logs and then mills or otherwise processes them. Section 18 specifies permit conditions for wood product manufacturers, allowing after-hours deliveries of raw materials for up to 90 days a year, and for after-hours exit from the factory or from the processing facility for delivery of fuels, be it cordwood, pellets, shavings, from October 1st through April 30th. This language recognizes that the forest products industry is weather dependent. By way of example, log trucks need frozen dirt roads in the winter, which you tend to get at night. They don't need mud, which you tend to get during the day. So we heard testimony to the effect that restrictions on entering and leaving processing facilities create pinch points. So we're trying to alleviate those pinch points. Section 19 is another forest products industry section. It reduces the fee for conversion of prime ag soil for wood products manufacturers from between as high as 3-to-1 or 2-to-1, now to always being 1-to-1. Another way we're trying with this bill to help both the forest industry and rural communities. Section 20 provides legislative intent and explains that Section 21 reflects the way jurisdiction over commercial and industrial development in towns without permanent zoning and subdivision regulations has been determined since the passage of Act 250 50 years ago. Section 21 codifies the long time administration of how development is defined for commercial or industrial purposes in a 1-acre town, meaning a town that does not have permanent zoning or subdivision regulations. It has zero effect on the status quo. It's simply codifying the last 50 years of practice. Reports. This bill contains three reports that seek to help develop guidance for the next steps in making our local and state decision-making apparatuses work more in sync with our policy goals, like successful farms and ag-related businesses, like vibrant downtowns, and like protection of key natural resources. Act 250 requires the NRB to issue a report with regard to Act 250 jurisdiction over agricultural businesses by January 1st, 2023. What's working well, what isn't working well, what are the possibilities for an easier process? Section 23 looks for an outside report, putting a fresh set of eyes on the entirety of the designated area program. It carries an appropriation of $150,000. Right now, we have village centers, designated downtowns, growth centers, neighborhood planning areas, neighborhood development areas, and various tax credit and grant programs that come with each. All of them are about an attempt to help incentivize the housing and other development in the centers of in and near the centers of our towns. This bill is looking with that $150,000 for an outside 360 review with municipal officials and RPCs to see what is working well and what's not working well. What are the impediments to the policy goals we have? And where are the opportunities to make things work better? Section 24 requires a report from the chair of the NRB, Natural Resources Board, on various Act 250 topics, including how to transition to a location-based system of jurisdiction, how to use the capability and development plan, the effectiveness of the current fee structure in Act 250, and an assessment of the current staffing levels within the Act 250 system. The rest of the bill is 492, H492, the Act 250 governance bill this body passed several weeks ago. There's one change to which I want to call your attention. Our legislative council picked up an omission from 492 as it passed the House. And that's in section 32 of the bill. The bill makes it clear that a request for a stay goes to the Environmental Review Board, not the Environmental Court. It was like of all the things that were moved over to the Environmental Review Board, that one got left out. I'm not going to subject you to a section by section of this bill. You've already had that pleasure. But rather let me remind you at a high level what the remaining sections accomplish. You will recall that H 492 is about restoring functional governance to the Act 250 process. It replaces the Natural Resources Board with a professional 5-member Environmental Review Board. This board would hear appeals of Act 250 decisions rather than the current practice of having appeals heard by the court system. The new board would build up expertise by hearing appeals and would, in turn, provide guidance to the entire system. This restores substantive authority over its own program, something every other agency have. We have a weirdly bifurcated system now where the board has little authority over its own program. The governance reform in the bill would also bring Act 250 back to its roots as a locally focused process, with hearings taking place in the community where a project is proposed. In other words, the process goes to you rather than you to the process. The most basic premise of these sections is that no process can work without functional governance, and you can't fix Act 250 until you fix the governance structure. That's job one. And remember, we have a 5-member board with no 2 from the same county to ensure that rural Vermont isn't forgotten. Just as a refresher, the board comes into being by July 1st, 2023, 14 months from now, and then has a full year for rulemaking before beginning to hear appeals on July 1, 2024. Any case filed on or before June 30th, 2024 shall be heard by the Environmental Court, but on that date, the process will switch without missing a beat. This bill is effective on passage, except that section 14 dealing with forest blocks and connecting habitat becomes effective on September 1st, 2024, after the rulemaking process is completed. Also, sections 36 and 37 are delayed until July 1, 2024, when the board starts hearing appeals. Madam Speaker, this is, on the one hand, a nuts and bolts bill, but it offers real progress and it's consequential. Indirectly, it asks the question whether we want Vermont to be made up of successful towns and villages surrounded by a successful working landscape, or whether we want to let outside forces determine our destiny in haphazard fashion. What do we want Vermont to be? Consistent with that, it is about putting tools in place to make sure we turn the reality of new people to living here, wanting to live here, to our advantage. Again, common thread is trying to make permitting process work better for all Vermonters. It makes it easier to build housing in downtowns, it supports the modernization of town bylaws to implement smart growth measures. It adds a measure of protection against forest fragmentation, which is good for both the industry and the environment. It eases operating restrictions for processors of forest products, and it makes Act 250 governance functional. A little bit more, by the way, almost done, about the Act 250 governance and what makes this different from both the old environmental board and the current court system. Not only will this board provide badly needed guidance to the Act 250 system, it will be a key resource for the legislature, for regional planning commissions, and those engaged in planning at any level. These people, these 5 members, the professionals, these people will be thinking about economic opportunity, housing, permitting, resource protection every day. They will be as steeped in these issues as anybody in Vermont. And they will be an independent resource, a trusted independent resource, sometimes simply being asked to comment by the legislature or perhaps the regional commission, sometimes proposing their own fixes to us. They will discern problems with the system and they will see opportunities to make it better. They will be a trusted resource. We don't have that now. It's a missing piece out of the entire process. We heard from the following witnesses: the executive director of the Ottaquechee Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission, the senior planner from the Ottaquechee Regional Planning Commission, the general manager of Colton Enterprises, the former president of the Home Builders and Remodelers Association, the sponsor of the bill, a resident of Rutland City, Director of Community Planning and Revitalization Agency of Commerce and Community Development, Planning and Policy Manager, Department of Housing and Community Development, Legislative Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, President of the Vermont Bankers Association, the Rivers Programs Manager, Department of Environmental Conservation, the General Counsel, and Forest and Wildlife Program Director with the Vermont Natural Resources Council and the Forest Partnership, Deputy Secretary, Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, that's a redundant, Consulting Forester, Northwoods Forestry, Chair of the Natural Resources Board, Senior Agricultural Development Coordinator, Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, Executive Director, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, River Ecologist, who's a resident of Middlesex, Planning Program Manager, Vermont Planners Association, Director of Property Value, the Director of Property Valuation and Review, Department of Taxes, the Executive Director of Vermonters for a Clean Environment, the Commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. We heard from the former coordinator of the District 5 Environmental Commission and now a concerned citizen of Barrie. General Counsel of the Natural Resources Board. We heard somebody from Public Affairs with AT&T. We heard from the Chair of the District 3 Environmental Commission. We heard from the Advocacy and Public Policy Director, Vermont Association of Realtors. We heard from a resident of Montpelier, retired director of the Rutland Public Works Department, and also that same person was the former chair of the Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm sorry, the former commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, senior vice president of Evernorth, which is the new name for what was Housing Vermont. Programs manager for Drinking Water and Groundwater Protection Division, Department of Environmental Conservation. We heard from the Director of Community Relations for the Champlain Housing Trust, Managing Director for Community Development, Vermont Housing Finance Agency. We heard from the Senior Fiscal Analyst from the Joint Fiscal Office. We heard from Director of Policy and Special Projects, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and Sustainable Communities Program Manager from the Vermont Natural Resources Council. We had others who were invited but didn't come in, but I won't read you that list. I'm not going to read you again the entire list because it will be that long again from the testimony we took for 492, but again, I read that a few weeks ago. With that, Madam Speaker, that concludes my report. But I do ask that when the question is asked, shall the bill be read a third time when we get to that point? This is one of the most important housing bills this legislature is going to have in front of it all session. It is a key piece of legislation to improve the Act 250 process. And so I ask that when the vote is taken, shall the question be read a third time, that vote be taken by roll.
Is not in order at this time.
Okay.
The question would, that's not the next
Okay,
question.
got it. Excuse me.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes.
And now, speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, your House Committee on Ways and Means reviewed the fees for S-234 and found them to be negligible or minimal. The April 26th fiscal note is dated as such and labeled revised, and it can be found on the House Ways and Means legislative page. And on a vote of 8-3-0, the committee voted in favor. The witnesses were reporter of the bill, House Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, Legislative Council, Office of Legislative Council, a fiscal analyst, Joint Fiscal Office, and Chair, Natural Resources Board. We respectfully recommend the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife.
And now speaking for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Underhill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the House Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife Committee for working with your House Appropriations Committee to help better understand S-234. We offer one amendment regarding Section 6 Municipal Bylaw and modernization grant funding. The amendment can be found on page 3495 of today's calendar. Our amendment strikes section 6 in its entirety and inserts the following. Of the funds appropriated in fiscal year 2023 to the municipality allocation of the municipal and regional planning fund, up to $650,000 shall be used for municipal bylaw modernization grants as established in 24 VSA 4307. The original language referred to via appropriating funds for municipal bylaw modernization grants to the extent available. The funds are in the FY23 House budget. Of the $872,000 in that budget line item, up to $650,000 shall be used for these grants. The new language is more precise. The vote on the House Appropriations Amendment was favorable, 11-0-0. Your House Appropriations Committee also voted favorably 7-4 on S-234 as amended by House Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, and further amended by House Appropriations. We ask for the body's support. Thank you.
Member from Manchester.
Madam Speaker, the committee appreciates the help from the Appropriations Committee and appreciates that the revenue we sought with the bill remains intact. And on a straw vote, the committee voted 803 in favor of the amendment recommended by the House Appropriations Committee.
Now the question is, shall the report of the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife be amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the report of the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife. Now the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, member from Northfield.
Madam Speaker, I would request that this proposal be divided. And that would be to divide sections 25 to 41 and the related effective dates separate, take them separately after taking up sections 1 to 24.
Member, just to clarify, you're asking in the first instance, so the first vote would be on sections 25 through 41 with the with those effective dates, and then the second would be sections 1 through 24?
No, Madam Speaker, I really confused things by describing them in separate order. First would be sections 1 through 24, and second would be sections 25 to 41 and the respective dates.
After conferring with the clerk, those this division can be made. And so the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, as amended in the first division, which is sections 1 through 24. And their related effective dates. Member from Northfield.
Madam Speaker, I think that there are important things that could be done to improve housing.
Point of inquiry, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, but we're on the where are we? I thought we were on the recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee.
No, remember, we are,
Sorry.
the question is to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife as amended. And then we now are working on the first division of the question, which is sections 1 through 24 and their related effective dates. Member from Northfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Addressing the first sections of this bill, I think that there was a great deal more that could have been done to improve the process, but I do think there are some important components that this part of the bill proposes, the sections before us now. I do support them despite my regrets that more was not done to enhance the ability for greater efficiency in addressing the costs of housing in the areas that we really want to encourage that housing.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife as amended in the first division, which is sections 1 through 24 and their related effective dates? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill in sections 1 through 24 in their effective dates. Now the question is, shall Thank you. Now the question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as set forth in the remainder of the amendment recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife as amended? Are you ready for that question? Member from Northfield.
Madam Speaker, I guess it may go without saying, but I should say it that I asked for it to be divided because this is the same bill, as one pointed out, that we passed earlier this session, but over the objection of many individuals who would not want to support this bill with the inclusion of these changes, which I do not think are helpful or productive to our process.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as set forth in the remainder of the amendment recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife as amended? Member from Linden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I agree that what was former 492, I objected to it at the time it was here. I still object to it. I would like to call the members' attention to the fact that increasing the size of the Natural Resources Board without making any other changes puts that board in an extreme fiscal disadvantage. It is already run at a deficit. There will be another $744,000 of deficit annually after this, and unless we make some other arrangements. And I do not believe that's the responsible fiscal position for our body.
Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
No.
No.
No. The ayes appear to have it. Division has been requested. The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as set forth in the remainder of the amendment recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife? All those in favor, please stand or raise your hand. Thank you. All those, you may be seated or lower your hand. All those opposed, please stand or raise your hand. You may be seated or lower your hands. Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 94. Those voting no, 45. The ayes have it, and you have amended the House proposal of amendment. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? Member from Middlebury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. S-234 is a timely and holistic update to land use planning and regulation. It addresses the housing crisis by expanding opportunities for priority housing projects. It addresses climate resiliency and biodiversity protection by adding a new criteria for forest blocks and habitat connectors. It recognizes the importance of our forest products industry and the challenges they face from climate change. And finally, it sets up a new professional governance structure to oversee the modernization of Act 250 now and into the future. Madam Speaker, because of the importance of this bill, I ask that when the vote is taken, that it be taken by roll.
The member from Middlebury requests that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll. Is the member sustained? The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Members, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, the clerk shall commence to call the roll.
Aki of Middletown Springs.
2 minutes. Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? I would like to remind members that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversation during a roll call. When the clerk calls your name, please answer in a loud and clear voice so the clerk can accurately record your vote. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Ansel of Callis. Anthony of Berry City. Harrison of Weathersfield. Austin of Colchester. Bartholomew of Heartland. Beck of St. Johnsbury. Byrong of Virgins. Black of Essex. Bloomley of Burlington. Bach of Chester. Bongarts of Manchester. Boslin of Westminster. Brady of Williston. Brennan of Colchester. Briglin of Thetford. Brown of Richmond.
Yes.
Brownell of Pownell. Rumstead of Shelburne. Burdett of West Rutland. Burke of Brattleboro. Burrows of West Windsor. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Canfield of Fairhaven. Chase of Colchester. Christie of Hartford.
Yes.
Tina of Burlington.
Yes.
Coffey of Guilford. Colburn of Burlington. Colson of Winooski. Conlon of Cornwall. Copeland Hansis of Bradford. Corcoran of Bennington. Portis of Lincoln. Copley of Rutland City. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Dolan of Essex. Dolan of Waitsfield. Donahue of Northfield. Donnelly of Hyde Park. Durfee of Shaftesbury.
Yes.
Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. Fagan of Rutland City. Feltus of Linden. Gannon of Wilmington. Garofano of Essex. Goldman of Rockingham. Ghostland of Northfield. Grata Moortown. Grata Moortown. Graham of Williamstown. Gregoire of Fairfield. Hango of Berkshire. Harrison of Chittenden. Helm of Fairhaven. Higley of Lowell. Hooper of Montpelier. Hooper of Randolph. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex. Howard of Rutland City. James of Manchester.
Yes.
Jerome of Brandon. Jessup of Middlesex. Kasenska of Burke. Palacky of South Burlington. Kimball of Woodstock. Kitzmiller of Montpelier.
This is Representative Kitzmiller, and I vote yes.
Kornheiser of Brattleboro. Labor of Morgan. LeClaire of Berrytown. Malone of South Burlington. Lanford of Virgins. LaRush of Franklin. LaFave of Newark. LaFave of Orange. Leffler of Venusburg. Lippert of Heinsberg.
Yes.
Long of Newfane.
Yes.
Marcotte of Coventry. Martell of Waterford. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCormick of Burlington. McCoy of Pulteney. McCullough of Williston. McFawn of Berrytown.
No.
Morganell of Milton. Morgan M of Milton. Morris of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington.
I certify that I'm Representative Mary Morrissey of Bennington and vote no.
Rowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. Murphy of Fairfax. I'm sorry, Murphy of Fairfax. Thank you. Nicole of Ludlow. Niger of Bennington. Norris of Sheldon. Norris of Shoreham. Knott of Rutland City. Noyes of Wolcott. O'Brien of Tunbridge. Odie of Burlington. Page of Newport City. Payala of Londonderry.
Yes.
Pulaski of Milton. Parsons of Newberry. Partridge of Windham. Pat of Worcester. Pearl of Danville. Peterson of Clarendon. Hugh of South Burlington. Rachelson of Burlington. Rogers of Waterville. Rosenquist of Georgia. Sackowitz of Randolph. Shy of Middlebury. Sherman of Stowe. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sibilia of Dover. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Smith of New Haven. Squirrel of Underhill. Stebbins of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Strong of Albany. Sullivan of Dorset.
Yes.
Supernaut of Barnard. Taylor of Colchester. Terenzini of Rutland Town. Till of Jericho. Tolino of Brattleboro. Toof of St. Albans Town. Townsend of South Burlington. Troiano of Stannard. Behovsky of Essex. Walker of Swanton. Waltz of Berry City. Webb of Shelburne. White of Bethel. White of Hartford.
Yes.
Whitman of Bennington.
I certify that I am Representative Dane Whitman of Bennington and vote yes.
Williams of Granby. No. Wood of Waterbury. Jacoboni of Morristown.
Yes.
Yantachka of Charlotte.
Yes.
Byrong of Virgins. Burdett of West Rutland. Holborn of Burlington. Hooper of Burlington. Pulaski of Milton. Pearl of Danville. Smith of New Haven. Terenzini of Rutland Town.
Member from Virgins.
Madam Speaker, may I vote?
You may.
Byrong, Virgins.
Yes.
For purposes of explanation, member from Northfield, Representative Donahue.
It is unfortunate when a separate bill that is a detriment to our processes is tacked onto one that could move us forward. because it forces my no vote, I can at least hope that a positive iteration returns to this body for further action.
Member from Northfield, Representative Ghostland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I voted no. This could have been a bill that we all could have been closer in agreement. Act 250 is outdated and needs reform. It is my hope in the future we work closer together to establish a fair, timely, and equitable process that benefits all of Vermont. After all, we all want a better climate to protect the beauty of all of Vermont. Thank you.
Member from Craftsbury.
Madam Speaker, may I explain my vote?
You may.
Vermont's landmark Act 250 law has been instrumental in sustaining the Vermont we love, balancing the preservation of our unique landscape with the economic and developmental needs of our communities. As we face a growing housing crisis, new pressures on our working landscape, and the adverse impacts of climate change, this bill takes important steps to modernize Act 250 to better serve the needs of today's businesses and communities.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 99. Those voting no, 43. The ayes have it, and third reading is ordered. Members, at this time, we will now take up House Bill 746, followed by S-122 and S-139. House Bill 746 is an act relating to an amendment to the Charter of the City of Burlington. The bill was referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass. The member from Wilmington, Representative Gannon, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 746, an act relating to an amendment to the Charter of the City of Burlington.
Member from Wilmington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. H 746 can be found online. H 746 proposes to repeal a section of the City of Burlington's charter to remove sexist and archaic language on sex work. This article passed with almost 70% of Burlington voters approving this amendment. There are 3 sections to the bill. Section 1 states that the General Assembly approves an amendment to the Charter of the City of Burlington that voters approved on March 1st, 2022. Section 2 repeals Section 48, subsection 7 of the Burlington Charter that empowers the City Council, and here I quote, to restrain and suppress houses of ill fame and disorderly houses, and to punish common prostitutes and persons consorting therewith. This language is filled with euphemism and arcane language regarding sex work and has become more a historic relic than a reliable source of criminal law. The underlying ordinance was repealed in 2021, and according to testimony we heard, that ordinance has not been used by the Burlington Police in recent memory. If Section 48, subsection 7 is repealed, it will have little to no legal effect. That's because the state of Vermont has a number of laws in Chapter 59 and Chapter 60 of Title 13, which regulate and criminalize sex work and human trafficking. Those state laws apply in Burlington and are available to all law enforcement and prosecutors. Section 3 contains the effective date, which is upon passage. The witnesses we heard from in House Government Operations are the City Attorney for the City of Burlington, an attorney for the campaign to vote yes on 5, the chairman of the Burlington Republican Party, the Vermont chair of New Englanders Against Sexual Exploitation, and 2 attorneys from the Office of Legislative Counsel. The vote in your House Government Operations Committee was 830 to approve this bill, and we hope this body will support us. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, member from Barrytown. The member from Barrytown requests that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll as the member sustained. The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I inquire of the reporter of the bill?
The member from Wilmington is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, we received a letter in our mailboxes from, the New Englanders Against Sexual Exploitation, asking us to vote no on this bill. But in it, it says something about no other city has removed its ability to regulate prostitution. Madam Speaker, did the committee look into that? Is that an accurate statement?
That question. So we did receive a legal memorandum from the city attorney for Burlington that did look into the issue. And there are approximately 19 municipalities, 13 villages, 2 towns, and 4 cities, which have charter provisions that expressly or impliedly give them the power to criminalize or regulate prostitution. Most of those charter provisions were adopted between 1870 and 1910. Well, many of those are in villages that have no government. For example, I represent the village of Jacksonville, which has no municipal government nor any police force. Only Montpelier appears to have repealed their prostitution language.
So Madam Speaker, then it's fair to say that we only know of one place that has repealed their prostitution, their ability to regulate prostitution?
That is correct, Madam Speaker, but I will note that most of those communities are villages that may or may not have acting municipality governments.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I guess I don't know the harm in keeping this in their charter. Doesn't mean they have to. It just gives them the ability to. And from my standpoint, Madam Speaker, this sends an absolutely horrible message. And I understand that some of that may not be accurate, but it certainly sounds like we're going down a path that I certainly don't want to see us go down. Thank you.
Member from Northfield.
Madam Speaker, may I interrogate the presenter?
The member from Wilmington is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, I too have heard a lot of secondhand scuttlebutt and a lot of concerns. And so I would just like a bit of clarification to some things that, quite frankly, I think I know the answer, but I want to be sure. As was stated in the presentation, this charter change does not in any way legalize anything that is in violation of our state criminal laws. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Speaker.
So anything in our statutes that currently relates to prostitution, soliciting prostitution, exploiting vulnerable persons under whatever characterization or language remains in effect, including in Burlington?
That is correct. I mean, currently on the books in state statute are bills criminalizing prostitution, slave traffic, which is bringing prostitutes into the state, unlawful procurement, human trafficking, and aggravated human trafficking.
So, Madam Speaker, would adopting this charter change for the city of Burlington mean that the police department in Burlington could no longer enforce those state criminal statutes since their charter change was made?
That is incorrect. The Burlington police could enforce state statute.
So, Madam Speaker, in other words, the only thing here is that the people of Burlington don't want it on their procedural list of oversight and are leaving it to state enforcement?
As I said in my floor report, the Burlington police have not used the ordinance, which was already repealed in 2021 in recent memory. So I believe that any prosecution that occurs or any arrests that occur are based on state statute.
So Madam Speaker, would it be fair to say or unfair to say that the people of Burlington were saying that they want to legalize prostitution by having voted on this?
I do not think so. I mean, I don't know how you can come to that conclusion. I think what they are doing is repealing archaic and sexist language.
I thank the member. Madam Speaker, I know that a lot has been said. It is out there on our social media and so forth, that this is about the legalization of prostitution. And although it's been referenced, this sets a bad tone. I think we have to be careful about not buying into misstatements in social media and acting based on that. That I think there's a great deal of misinformation. This has nothing to do with making anything legal that has been and is illegal in our state laws. It purely has to do with Burlington's charter in terms of its internal decision-making about local enforcement, not about local police enforcement of state law. So I don't see an issue in following the wishes of the people in Burlington for removing this from their local charter.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Clarendon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, may I question the presenter of the bill, please?
The member from Wilmington is interrogated.
Yes, member, can you tell me whether you listed the folks you took testimony from? Can you tell me whether any of those are from a national group here to maybe gin up support for sex work here?
Well, of the groups that testified before our committee, the only one that seems to have connections outside of Vermont is the New Englanders Against Sexual Exploitation. However, we did hear from the Vermont chair of that organization.
Okay, but none of the other groups come from afar to advocate for their position.
Well, the only other group we heard from, other than legislative counsel and the city attorney for the city of Burlington, was an attorney from Campaign to Vote Yes on 5, which I think was very specific to the article in the warning for the city of Burlington.
Okay, thank you. Another question though. What do you know what precipitated this? I mean, you say you get rid of archaic language in the charter, but there's probably a ton of archaic language in the charter. Why all of a sudden this particular subject? Do you have any idea?
I do not know that. I just know from what the city attorney told us that they were attempting to clean up archaic language that was in their charter. I mean, this language, based on his understanding, could be as much as 100 years old.
Okay, and what did you say the vote was? Can you, do you have numbers?
Yes, I can give you the numbers. 2 seconds, please. So this was question 5 on the ballot. And so, as I said, it was the vote for yes was 6,629 votes in favor, which was 69.43% of the vote. And the no votes were 2,919 votes, or 30.57% of the vote.
Okay, thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, the clerk shall commence to call the roll.
Aki in Middletown Springs.
1 minute. Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? I would like to remind members that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversations during a roll call. When the clerk calls your name, will you please answer in a loud and clear voice so the clerk can accurately record your vote? The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Ansel of Callis. Anthony of Berry City. Harrison of Weathersfield. Austin of Colchester. Bartholomew of Heartland. Beck of St. Johnsbury. Byrong of Virgins.
Yes.
Black of Essex. Bloomley of Burlington. Bach of Chester. Bongarts of Manchester. Boslett of Westminster. Brady of Williston. Brennan of Colchester. Briglin of Thetford. Brown of Richmond.
Yes.
Brownell of Pownell. Rumstead of Shelburne. Burdett of West Rutland. Burke of Brattleboro. Burrows of West Windsor. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Thanks. Canfield of Fairhaven. Chase of Colchester. Christie of Hartford.
Yes.
Sheena of Burlington.
Yes.
Coffee of Guilford. Colburn of Burlington. Colson of Winooski. Conlon of Cornwall. Copeland-Hansis of Bradford. Corcoran of Bennington. Cordes of Lincoln. Copley of Rutland City. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Dolan of Essex. Dolan of Waitsfield. Donahue of Northfield. Donnelly of Hyde Park. Durfee of Shaftesbury.
Yes.
Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. Fagan of Rutland City. Feltus of Linden. Gannon of Wilmington. Garifano of Essex. Goldman of Rockingham. Ghostland of Northfield. Grad of Moortown. Graham of Williamstown. Gregoire of Fairfield. Hengo of Berkshire. Harrison of Chittenden. Helm of Fairhaven. Higley of Lowell. Hooper of Montpelier. Hooper of Randolph. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex. Howard of Rutland City. James of Manchester.
Yes.
Jerome of Brandon. Jessup of Middlesex. Kosenska of Burke. Kalaki of South Burlington. Kimball of Woodstock. Kitzmiller of Montpelier.
This is Representative Kitzmiller. I vote yes.
Kornheiser of Brattleboro. Labor of Morgan. Leclerc of Berrytown. Lalonde of South Burlington. Lanford of Virgins. LaRush of Franklin. Lefebvre of Newark. Lefebvre of Orange. Leffler of Venusburg. Lippert of Heinsberg.
Yes.
Long of Newfane.
Yes.
Marcotte of Coventry. Martell of Waterford. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCormick of Burlington. McCoy of Pulteney. McCullough of Williston. McFawn of Berrytown.
No.
Morgan L. of Milton. Morgan M. of Milton. Morris of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington.
I certify that I'm Representative Morrissey of Bennington and vote no.
Rowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. Murphy of Fairfax. Nicole of Ludlow. Niger of Bennington. Norris of Sheldon. Norris of Shoreham. Knott of Rutland City. Noyes of Wolcott. O'Brien of Tunbridge. Odie of Burlington. Page of Newport City. Ayala of Londonderry.
Yes.
Pulaski of Milton. Parsons of Newberry. Parsons of Newbury. Partridge of Windham. Pat of Worcester. Pearl of Danville. Peterson of Clarendon. Pugh of South Burlington. Rachelson of Burlington. Rogers of Waterville. Rosenquist of Georgia. Sakowitz of Randolph. Shy of Middlebury. Sherman of Stowe. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sibilia of Dover. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Smith of New Haven. Squirrel of Underhill. Stebbins of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Strong of Albany. Sullivan of Dorset.
Yes.
Supernaut of Barnard. Taylor of Colchester. Terenzini of Rutland Town. Till of Jericho. Salino of Brattleboro. Sorry, Toledo of Brattleboro. Thank you. Toof of St. Albans Town. Townsend of South Burlington. Troyano of Stannard. Behovsky of Essex. Walker of Swanton. Waltz of Berry City. Webb of Shelburne. White of Bethel. White of Hartford.
Yes.
Whitman of Bennington.
I certify that I am Representative Dane Whitman of Bennington and vote yes.
Williams of Granby. Wood of Waterbury. Yakavoni of Morristown.
Yes.
Jan Tachka of Charlotte.
Yes.
Bach of Chester. Burdett of West Rutland. Colbert of Burlington. Fagan of Rutland City. Cooper of Montpelier. Cooper of Burlington. Morgan L. of Milton. Odie of Burlington. Odie of Burlington. Pulaski of Milton. Pearl of Danville. Smith of New Haven. Terenzini of Rutland Town. Till of Jericho.
For purposes of explanation, member from Brattleboro.
Yes today as an affirmation of people's rights over their own bodies and towards the increased safety and security and self-determination that right provides.
Member from Essex.
This charter change was supported by over 69% of Burlington voters. The change removes arcane and dehumanizing language. The stigma this language creates does far more harm to sex workers and victims of trafficking than it does to protect them. I vote yes to affirm the humanity of sex workers and victims of trafficking and to eliminate oppressive language.
Member from Burlington.
May I explain my vote, Madam Speaker?
You may.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I voted yes because language matters and addressing and eradicating sexism wherever it exists matters.
Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 105. Those voting no, 33. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Members, we are going to do Senate Bill 122, Senate Bill 139, Senate Bill 161, Senate Bill 269, and then we'll check in on where we are with things. With that, Senate Bill 122 is an act relating to the required votes of presidential electors. The bill was referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence. The member from Essex, Representative Michalski, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S 122, an act relating to the required votes of presidential electors.
Member from Essex.
Hello.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. S-122 can be found in the Senate Journal from February 11th, 2022, or on the House Government Operations Committee page from April 28th, 2022, if you wish to follow along. In July of 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld that a state may bind the votes of a presidential elector and may dismiss an elector and their vote if it does not align with the requirements under Vermont law. Presently, all 3 electors must cast their vote for the candidate that wins the Vermont election. Following the Supreme Court ruling, it prompted a closer look at this Vermont law and a discrepancy being solved with the bill S-122. This is conforming language in our elections law to align elector voting requirements with Chapter 17 VSA Chapter 58. In 2011, Vermont passed a law joining the National Popular Vote Compact, which is 17 VSA Chapter 58. This agreement would go into effect when the states in the agreement reach an electoral threshold of 260 electors. When this threshold is reached, it will change how the electors are required to cast their vote to align with the national popular vote. Vermont statute only aligns with our current electoral law, and S-122 conforms Vermont statute to make sure that the language is applicable and continues to align with electoral law as it stands now, and would continue to be accurate in the event that national popular vote, the agreement reaches the required threshold to become active. The committee heard from Legislative Counsel in the Office of Legislative Counsel, the senator sponsor of the bill, Director of Elections and Campaign Finance at the Secretary of State's office, and the committee vote on this conforming language change was 11-0-0, and we ask for the body's support.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Now we'll turn to Senate Bill 139, which is an act relating to non-discriminatory school branding. Member from Shelburne.
Madam Speaker, I move we postpone action on S-139 2 legislative days.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have postponed action on Senate Bill 139 for 2 legislative days. Next, we'll turn to Senate Bill 161, which is an act relating to extending the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement. The bill was referred to the Committee on Energy and Technology, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Worcester, Representative Pat, will speak for the committee. Affecting the revenue of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Energy and Technology. The member from Thetford, Representative Maslin, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-161, an act relating to extending the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement.
Member from Worcester.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members will find the proposed strike all amendment to S-161, an act relating to extending the baseload renewable portfolio requirement, on page 3444 of today's calendar. S-161 amends Section 8009 of Title 30, which relates to power plants that generate electricity using biomass, such as wood chips. As a practical matter, the only biomass-fueled power plant covered by this statute is the 22-megawatt biomass power plant located in Rygate. The power plant received its certificate of public good and has been in operation since 1990. The plant supplies approximately 3% of Vermont's total electric power demand. The Rygate Power Plant supports Vermont ratepayers and the Vermont economy in a number of ways. Unlike most other types of renewable generation, which are intermittent, the Rygate plant provides baseload power to Vermont electricity consumers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It provides a hedge against the regional wholesale energy prices, which often spike in the winter when other forms of renewable power are more scarce. As an in-state power source, it provides valuable energy security, and the plant provides a critical market to support our forest economy and the demand for low-grade wood harvest material. In the event that the Rygate plant's efficiency is increased by at least 50% by September 1st, 2025, the bill directs the Public Utilities Commission, the PUC, to extend the power purchase agreement with a new rate until 2032. Through an open regulatory process, the PUC sets pricing for long-term contracts for different types of renewable generation, which offer predictability and stability to the owner-operators. Electric utilities are required to purchase their pro rata share of the generation at the price set by the PUC. So this arrangement is referred to as a, quote, standard offer. S-161 builds on this body's work from last year when we passed S-1, which extended the operating authority of the Rygate facility to October 2024, while requiring the owner of the plant to come up with a plan to use the excess heat from the plant to increase its efficiency. It also asked the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation to report on a contingency plan if the plant should end up closing. Madam Speaker, may I quote from that report?
You may.
The ACCD and FPR report found that in the event of the Rygate Power Station, Rygate Power Station were to close, there is, quote, no other readily available market for the whole tree chips it consumes. Alternative markets are not currently in development and would take considerable amounts of time and capital to develop, and it is unlikely that a new enterprise will form on the site of the plant. This bill lays out a detailed timeline for the company to construct a facility to use the excess heat from the plant for a, quote, beneficial purpose, a term which is specifically defined in the bill. If the new facility increases the plant's overall efficiency by at least 50%, the PUC will conduct a new rate determination and extend the obligation to purchase power from the plant through November 2032. If, on the other hand, the company does not meet this significant objective in accordance with the timeline, then the Rygate Generating Plant's authority to continue to operate and sell its power through the standard offer arrangement will lapse. This plant provides important renewable baseload energy to Vermonters, and the continued operation of the plant, while it transitions to a more efficient method of operation, is beneficial to the economy of the state and particularly to the rural economy in the eastern part of the state. Madam Speaker, I would now like to yield to the member from Craftsbury to report on the language in the bill.
The member from Worcester yields to the member from Craftsbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Turning to the language in the bill. Section 1 is related to the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement. This section contains multiple amendments to 30 VSA 8009, the statute establishing the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement. It requires Vermont utilities to purchase the power from the plant used to meet this requirement. The first change extends the requirement to November 1st, 2032, unless it is terminated earlier by other requirements added in this bill. It then directs the PUC to conduct a new rate determination for the price of the power beginning on November 1st, 2026 and ending on November 1st, 2032. It also updates the criteria the PUC shall use to determine the new rate. Section K adds new co-location and efficiency requirements that the plant must meet, including requiring the owner of the plant to cause the plant's overall efficiency to be increased by at least 50%. This section also outlines a detailed timeline with benchmarks for constructing the facility to use the excess thermal heat generated at the plant for a beneficial purpose. A beneficial purpose may include the displacement of fossil fuel use for the sustainable production of a product or service, or a more efficient or less costly generation of electricity. If the new facility fails to meet the efficiency goal, then the obligation for Vermont utilities to purchase the power from the plant will cease. Section L requires the owners of the plant to report annually on the wood fuel purchases for the plant. The report shall include the average monthly fuel price, the average monthly price paid for wood fuel, and the source of the wood fuel, including location, number, and types. Section 2 relates to the PUC's order extension. This section amends the language from last year's Act 39, which extended the existing rate paid to the plant until October 31st, 2024. This amendment extends it further so that the current levelized rate is extended to October 31st, 2026. This additional time is needed in order to give the plant's owners sufficient time to design, engineer, and develop the improvements to the plant that will be required in order for it to better utilize the heat created in the plant's operation and thus make it more efficient. Section 3 relates to the Rygate Decommissioning Fund. This section directs the Department of Public Service to assess the current value of the Rygate Decommissioning Fund and determine if it is sufficient to cover the costs necessary to decommission the plant. The Department of Public Service shall report back to the General Assembly by January 15th, 2023. Section 4 relates to the wood fuel prices. This section directs the Department of Forest, Parks and Rec in consultation with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to conduct an analysis of the wood fuel market and calculate a minimum fair market price for wood fuel for a biomass plant. Section 5 relates to harvesting practices. This section directs the Agency of Natural Resources to review the existing Memorandum of Understanding on Rygate's required wood harvesting practices. The MOU is a part of Rygate's Certificate of Public Good and is an agreement between ANR, DPS, and the owner of Rygate on the harvesting practices required for wood purchased by the plant. ANR shall report back to the General Assembly by July 1st, 2023 on recommended or completed modifications to the MOU. Section 6 is the effective date. The bill shall take effect on passage. I now yield to the member from Worcester to finish the report.
The member from Craftsbury yields to the member from Worcester.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our committee heard from the following: Legislative Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, Senior Agricultural Development Coordinator, the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, Agriculture, Climate and Land Use Policy Manager, Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, an analyst for the Public Utility Commission, General Counsel and Forest and Wildlife Program Director, Vermont Natural Resources Council, the Forest Partnership, Director of Stored Solar, which is the owner and operator of the plant, the Power Supply Manager for Vermont Electric Cooperative, a lobbyist for the Vermont Forest Products Association, a managing member of Carbon Negativity LLC, a staff attorney for the Public Utility Commission, the Director of Planning for the Department of Public Service, Secretary, Vermont Woodlands Association, the Chief Public Supply Executive at Green Mountain Power, Co-Director of Biofuel Watch, a representative from Leonine, representing the Rygate Power Station, a lobbyist from MMR LLC, and the Commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. Your House Energy and Technology Committee, that's the committee that brings the heat, found the strike all amendment favorable on a vote of 9-0-0, and respectfully requests your support of this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Energy and Technology? Are you ready for the question? Nope. Oh, my apologies. Now speaking, for giving the report from the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Thetford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the bill came to House Ways and Means because there are several bill back provisions in the legislation, proposed legislation. A bill back provision is a provision whereby Forest Parks and Recreation or anybody else who is conducting a study on behalf of an applicant or in this case, the owner of the plant in Rygate can be billed back by Forest Parks and Recreation for studies that are undertaken as part of the bill. The studies, as I hope is clear, are paid for by the owner or an applicant in many cases. In this case, it's the plant owners who are also an applicant. And there is no fiscal impact on the revenues of the state whatsoever. So on that, Madam Speaker, House Ways and Means voted to support the bill as it was introduced in our committee, and we urge the body to do so as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Now the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Energy and Technology? Member from Franklin.
Madam Speaker, may I interrogate the presenter?
The member from Worcester is interrogated.
I just wondered if you had testimony as to whether the 50% was practical and possible within the duration of time specified.
Yes, we did. We had a lot of testimony about it, and the owner of the plant is agreeable to what is in this bill.
Thank you.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Energy and Technology? Are you ready for the question? Member from Williston.
Madam Speaker, I do not support this amendment. I prefer the Senate's version, as I believe, well, I'll just say that much. But even, and I do appreciate the efforts of our House committee to put some sideboards on this particular proposal, especially in as much as the owner of the heat plant has not been able to really demonstrate that his business is much better than the previous owners running of it. But more importantly, notwithstanding, I love that word I've learned here, the fact that I've heated my house with wood for 60 plus years, currently burning 24 cord a year, oh my goodness. I do understand we need to stop burning things on this planet. And communication with this committee, Energy Committee, from me has failed to encourage them to not put burning wood in the heat standard bill. And I just need to stand and recognize the fact for our house here, we need to think in a better way than burning wood. All the low-grade wood that this generation plant will be burning would be way better off just going back to the forest floor and saving the carbon that way and helping all the organisms that live in the forest floor.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Energy and Technology? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Now we'll move to Senate Bill 269, which is an act relating to extending the Energy Savings Account Partnership Pilot Program. The bill was referred to the Committee on Energy and Technology, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence. The member from Charlotte, Representative Yantachka, will speak for the committee. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from Brattleboro, Representative Kornheiser, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S 269, an act relating to extending the Energy Savings Account Partnership Pilot Program.
Member from Charlotte.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, S 269 can be found by searching for the bill on the General Assembly page and opening the unofficial version of the bill as passed by the Senate. S 269 is a bill that extends a pilot program established by Act 150 of 2018. It allows qualified businesses to pay the energy efficiency charge for electricity into an energy savings account in order to finance energy efficiency projects that are unique to the business and not necessarily supported by Efficiency Vermont. This program is called the Energy Savings Account Partnership Pilot. While the projects are developed and managed by the business itself, they must be approved by Efficiency Vermont and the Department of Public Service, and the results of the project must be verified by those entities as well. Under the program, for 3 years starting in 2018, participating businesses were able to funnel their energy efficiency charge payments into their energy savings accounts for approved projects. Unfortunately, just as the projects began to be submitted and approved in 2019 and early 2020, COVID hit and impacted project development and implementation schedules. Participants have requested an additional 18 months to complete projects that are started, and S 269 is the response to that request. Turning to the bill now, Section 1 of S 269 extends contributions to the energy savings accounts until 12/31/2023. Businesses may request a further extension to December 31st, 2026, in order to spend the funds in their energy savings accounts. Annual reports, which would have ended in 2023, will continue until November 1st, 2025. Excuse me. It also extends the date from January 15th, 2023 to July 1st, 2027 for the Public Utility Commission to submit its recommendation to the General Assembly on whether the pilot program should continue. Section 2 of the bill creates the Energy Savings Account Partnership Pilot Program Working Group. On or before January 15, 2023, this group shall report to the General Assembly with recommended changes to the Energy Savings Account Program rules. S 269 becomes effective on passage as provided in Section 3. Madam Speaker, your House Committee on Energy and Technology recommends that we concur with the Senate on S 269 on a vote of 9-0-0, and we ask for the support of the body. The committee heard from the Chief Operating Officer and the Chief Technology Officer of Chroma Technology, Deputy Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, the Regional General Manager of West Rock, an MMR lobbyist, our Legislative Counsel from the Office of Legislative Counsel, the Engineering, Health, and Safety Analyst of Collins Aerospace, the Director of Planning for the Department of Public Service, and the Director of Public Affairs for Efficiency Vermont. And that, Madam Speaker, concludes my report, and thank you.
And now speaking for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Brattleboro.
In sections 1 and 2, we appreciated the Committee on Energy and Technology's work and found that there were no new fiscal impacts and made no changes. However, we do offer 2 instances of amendments. Actually, yeah. In section 3, we, at the request of the chair of the Committee on Energy and Technology and the director of OEO, we amend the existing statute governing the Home Weatherization Assistance Program administered by OEO. And instead of the CPI as an inflation factor, we amended the language to comply with a more comprehensive current practice they are using of accounting for changing costs by using the language to account for inflation of materials and labor. In sections 4 and 5, we amend the existing statute on veggie, which is the Vermont, so sure I was going to remember what this stands for wrong. The Vermont Employment Growth Incentive Program, thank you, to move the sunset date 3 years into the future and make those changes retroactive in order to validate any program activities that have occurred before we pushed that sunset out. Section 6 has those new effective dates. There's no fiscal note as none of these changes have any new fiscal impacts. The vote out of committee was 11-0-0, and we heard from the reporter of the bill from the House Committee on Energy and Technology, the chair of the House Committee on Energy and Technology, legislative counsel from the Office of Legislative Counsel, the senior economist from the Joint Fiscal Office, the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity at the Department of Children and Families, and the director of Public Affairs at Efficiency Vermont. Thank you.
Member from Charlotte.
Madam Speaker, the House Committee on Energy and Technology thanks the Committee on Ways and Means for their work in enhancing and improving the bill and recommends that the amendment be adopted.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Ways and Means? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. May I please see all House leadership up at the podium, please? Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Members, after having a quick huddle with all House leadership, we are going to take a dinner break and a break for those committees that need to regroup. So the House will stand in recess until the fall of the gavel at 6 p.m.